Okay, okay, gang. Tonight we're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to talk about the gym that changed the world, which would be Gold's Gym, of course. We're also going to throw Mr. Gold's actual routine from like 1959 in there. And there's the original Gold's Gym on the outside. Didn't look like much, did it? But one of the most iconic gyms in history, really. And I actually dedicated a chapter of my book from a few years back, more than a few, honestly. But this one here, Great Men, Great Gyms of the Golden Age. And you see up on top, there's Vic Taney, you see Joe Weider. There's actually dead in the middle there with his arms spread. That's Joe Gold. Just above him, you see Vince Gironda, and some other famous guys from the time. Dick Tyler, who was quite the writer back in these days, writes this Mr. America magazine at 65 article. We'll just do a couple pages from that. I'm not going to do every page of every article. You can see that in the book or more of it, certainly. But it's just talking about how Joe's going to open up this killer gym and exactly where it was going to be. There he is. That's the man himself. You know what? Is that Joe Gold? Yeah, I think it is. Um, yeah, it says it right there. Duh. Um, so it's talking about how it's going to be outfitted with two complete sets of dumbbells, 10 to 80 in five increments, and then up to 150 by tens. Pretty good set for, these days. They probably go up to like 250s or 300s. Uh, the co-manager at the time was this guy, Mr. Zabo Kazuski, and always known for his abs, but he had a really good physique, as you can see here. As in fact, this is probably the best overall physique shot I've seen of Zabo. And that was a guy that spent a lot of time on the beach, but he also could be found probably from time to time at the pit, and then of course at Gold's also training. So that's asking like how establishments get to be known as the in place, talking about restaurants and everything like that. And there was just some sort of mystique that Gold's had, and it helped. You had all these great bodybuilders at the time, like here's Franco Spot and Mike Katz, two of the bigger name guys, and you can see he's not playing any mean weight there. And then we move into this some stuff from this Iron Man article, which was like 10 years later. The famous Golds. There's Rick Drazen with Arnie. Not sure what Arnie's doing there, but anyway, Rick was the guy who actually drew the logo, the first logo, the barbell guy for Gold's Gym, and it's an icon to this day. On the second floor, you might find a manager's office. At this time, uh, you'd have the manager being Ken Waller, and talks about it being a nice place to visit. There's Ken. This isn't. This is, I don't know if this is from that era or a little bit later. I think it's probably a little bit later, but guy was in shape from the 60s well through into the 80s, I believe. Anywho, then we go into this muscular development. So, of course, Mr. Hoffman has to cover it too. And Don Ross wrote this one about the California Gold Rush in the old days, and then the new one, which was Gold's Gym, Gold Rush. And he's talking about that, a couple decades before this, you would, if you didn't have like a hardcore workout facility with no sauna, a jacuzzi, spa, pool, racquetball court, or any of that stuff, and, I'll call it chromed and gleaming stuff, you didn't do well. But they kind of put that on its end. And there's Joe. This is 1959. Not great legs, but that was pretty commonly what they considered a good physique back in those days. And he did win a couple things back in those days, even though he was a little bit older when he competed too. Um, Bodybuilders began leaving their gyms for golds, and a lot of times even guys that lived on the East Coast or elsewhere would come out there and train just for a short time, especially during the summer. They could go out and get the vitamin D, have some fun on the beach. Of course, Arnie was one of the regulars at Gold's, and you can see the iconic cinder blocks in the background. That's always kind of a telltale sign of the old Golds. That was, of course, Bill West. He was clowning around with. Um, and then so it's saying that the change of hands did nothing to diminish Gold's. How it switched over from whoever it was in six from the original owners. And then in '75 they did Pump and Iron there, which made Arnie and Lou Ferrigno a little bit more famous than they were. There's of course Lou. And, Lou was huge, no doubt. Seemed like a decent guy too, although Arnie was always razzing him and giving him a hard time. So he says the first thing that came to my mind when he walked in was that he had to train harder, and this is coming from Lou Ferrigno, who, trust me, did not train lightly ever. Um, so here you see Arnie standing behind Dave Draper, two of the icons, and again you see that cinder block wall, which is, as he says, telltale sign of that gym. Several prestigious contests were hosted by Golds starting in '77 with the Mr. America, and then some other stuff it talks about here. Uh, and then Golds led the way in promoting the recognition of women in the sport by hosting the first national women's championships. Then, right after that, was when Grimco and a couple other guys bought the building for $100,000, which is kind of hard to imagine in monetary terms these days. But I guess back in those days it was a decent amount. And then they saw the opportunity for getting into the whole supplement thing as people were starting to pay more attention to their diets. So they actually launched what they're calling pharmaceuticals here. Their line was called Pro Line, but it was vitamins and minerals and stuff like that. And to this day, they sell stuff. This is they're obviously Gold's Gym pre-workout formula, which is a little bit pricey, but it's not crazy. Probably really good. And then they developed a computerized program to analyze individual nutrition and fitness, sold not only through the gym but sporting goods, health food stores through the country, and then sportswear with the Gold's logo. And again, we mentioned that Rick Drazen was the guy who designed this shirt, which is a really cool shirt. Even if you've never been to Gold's, you might want to have one of these shirts just because it's cool. Uh, in fact, I think I might get one myself. Um, so yeah, Rick Drazen did that one, and then so the driving concept at Gold's had always been that there was no stereotypical muscle man; that it should be open to anyone and everyone, whether you're a jet setter, a weightlifter, a bodybuilder, a movie star, whatever. And certainly if you're just a regular Joe Schmo, you get the opportunity to train alongside of some of the greatest bodybuilders of the golden age and some movie stars here and there. Here's Carl Weathers, obviously, and I think he trained. I think he trained at Gold's and at Vince's from time to time. Um, Here it's talking about the vacationing athletes working out side by side with the locals. And then they had everything from free weights to Kaiser air pressure machines. This is a little bit later on, obviously. Now, this is Harold Zinkin, who was also in the cover of my Great Man, Great Jim's book. And it's Harold Zinkin, and he was a contemporary of Joe Gold at the time when they were competitive back in the 50s. So, in many ways, Gold was responsible for putting local bodybuilding and worldwide bodybuilding on the map. And this was coming from Don Ross in muscular development. There he is. He had a pretty good physique. He won some titles. I have a, I think I have a neck training article someplace that talks about him because he did have a pretty outstanding neck, and he thought it was something you had to train. Anyway, so moving into Joe Gold's actual routine from '59, and some of these weights really are like pretty incredible, really. Um, what happened to that text there? There it is. So press behind the neck, 5 sets of 5. Uh, and this is just the picture of what that would start like. And I'm not sure why he's using the curl bar here, but you certainly could use that or a straight bar to do the behind the necks. And so then he does 2 arm curls, 5 sets of 5 with 75-pound dumbbells. That's some pretty hellacious. He has to be cheating if he's using that weight. And then the 2 dumbbell French curl. Uh, Number 2, I'm sorry, is the dumbbell French curl, and I believe that was a 1 dumbbell that he was using for that, and it was a 120-pound dumbbell. And here's Phil Heath demonstrating the 2 hand seated uh, dumbbell curl. Then he goes into back dumbbell rowing, 5 sets of 10 with 100. Nothing crazy. 5 sets of 10 with 170 on the pull down. That's pretty good. And then 5 sets of 6 with a 50-pound weight attached, doing behind the neck chins. Obviously, this is a demonstration of the 1 arm rows. Always been one of my favorite back exercises. Um, this demonstration here, he's not using that much weight. He's just showing you how it's done. And then he goes into a superset where he does 1 set of bench, and without a pause, he goes right into what they're calling a bent arm lateral, which is flies, I'm sure. And then so he alternates. So he has two different bench days. So he'll do an incline bench on one day, and the other day he does flat bench. And of course, this is Jeff Magruder, who we recently did a video on. He was a pretty massive bench presser, ended up doing over 600, but pretty cool shot from the top. So then Joe goes into legs, and he does 5 sets of 5 again with 300 in the squat. That's respectable. And then a couple things he does sets of 9 for, which is a little bit weird, but it is what it is. So not tons of volume, but probably just enough. And I'm sure the leg press he's talking about there is that old school style where you're straight underneath it. And then this is a high bar, like more of a bodybuilding type squat as opposed to a power squat, where it sits a little back further, and you use a little bit more hips and back and less quads. So then he's talking about the patience and zeal that are frequently encountered among younger bodybuilders, but he wasn't all that young when he was doing this, and he talks about that. You can still do it even if you're 35 and beyond. And here's a perfect example of that. That's Mr. Ed Corney, and he was really in his heyday in his 40s. And there he is, overlooked by Joe. And of course, he's got the Weider barbells there. And it talks about how Joe Gold was a Weider man, so probably a lot of his weights were and equipment were Weider stuff. And there's Ed, pretty good physique there, and he won some. He won some titles. Um, there he is, a little bit younger, and this is at Gold's, and he's looks like he's doing some cheat curls with the curl bar, and again the Weider weights and stuff. Uh, Really good shoulders and stuff there. Besides bodybuilders and stuff like that, they had a tug of war group, which was this bunch of guys, none of whom gave a rat's tail about their body weight. And one of the bigger guys was this guy, which is Steve Merjanian, who we covered about when dinosaurs roamed the earth. He's one of them. He was typically ran about 290, and just a strong dude. And so we're going to get into the last article, which is from Rick Wayne here, talking about Golds being this fantastic experience. And it's great. You see this little kid staring in the window. I'm sure he's, looking at some big time guys training and dreaming about getting in there himself. This is Reg Lewis, which is going to be mentioned in the article as being promoting something. Right here, it talks about Ricky. He was met him, and then he was talking about Arnold and Franco were in Europe. Doing the Mr. Universe, and he met some of these different guys that were going to be at Golds. So there you see Looks like Tony Pearson. It's Robbie Robinson at the bottom. It has a text box at the bottom that you can check out. And it looks like Waller at the top there, too. Uh, so Ricky was kind of reluctant to admit that Golds had some certain mystique that helped him to train better. He actually, was from trained typically in New York. Then he found out that quite a few of the guys, even from the East Coast, would go to at least spend a few weeks or, training pre-contest in the summertime to Golds, and then you could hit the beach, get some vitamin D. And of course, he trained at Vince Gironda's place before he went back to Golds, and he talks about his experiences at Vince's. Um, Vince's was a little bit different in the type of equipment that he had. Vince was never big on squatting. He felt like doing sissy squats and stuff like that was better for your legs. Uh, and you could find a guy like this working out there. Remember Beretta, Robert Blake, uh, with the parrot? That was a pretty cool show back in those days. And there was other stars like that, and it mentions like a guy from Grizzly Adams and stuff like that. And he talks about the type of contests or the type of talks that they had about contests, and everything was about muscle at Golds. They didn't have like intellectual conversations about books or anything like that, which you might have a little bit more of at Vince's, from at least what from Ricky's saying. Um, and there, of course, is Robbie Robinson, who is also a frequent flyer at Golds. And he actually talks about, when he was there, Ricky, that Robbie was in a corner doing leg extensions and banging them out. Here he is talking about it right there. Um, has a big blow up, like cardboard thing of Bill Grant, and kind of dominates the scene, he says, and it inspires you to train. He's doing a double biceps pose. And then Mike Menser arrives, and Mike was not all that well liked by most of the guys in those days because he had this, you know, different type of training than everybody else. And he didn't do he did less frequency and just what he called extremely high intensity and shorter workouts. He wasn't doing 6 days a week and 2, 3 hours a day. Almost got into fistfights with guys over his training, oddly enough. Um, but then he's talking about encouraging words coming from here, there, and everywhere. And even then, Ricky was a pretty well known guy, so I'm sure he got, he was jovial with a lot of the crew there. And then again, you have the big guys like Mr. Steve here. I'm not sure if this was at Gold's or the Pit or where exactly this was, but he did train at Gold's, at the beach, at the Pit, at the Dungeon, and all these different places. I don't think he ever went to Vince's gym. Um, there's Draper, and that's another guy that frequented the beach, and he talks a lot about it training in the Dungeon, which was pretty cool in a couple of his books. Brother Iron, Sister Steel, I think it is one of them. And there's Pudgy Abby Stockton. I don't know how you could call her pudgy, but maybe she was pudgy before she got into this kind of shape. But she was another one that frequented the beach. Probably stopped in the Golds once in a while. And if you want to read a lot more about that gym and all these other gyms, Muscle Beach, Bill Pearl's Pasadena gym, the Dungeon, etc., it's all in the book. So, I mean, that's about it for the gym that changed the world. I thank you for watching, and I'm out.